Hey all, Michael here. Today I'm going to talk about one of the questions I hear a lot from people who are wanting to start out their own comic for the first time, and it's, what should my comic be about? And that's kind of a difficult thing to say. I can't tell you exactly what yours should be about, but I could kind of give you a little guidance. So you've probably heard of write what you know. It's a very common expression and it makes a lot of sense. And that applies to comics. If you're doing something that you don't know anything about, then I would say maybe a more apt expression should be write something you're interested in. If you're writing something you know, that works really well if you're doing something autobiographical. But if it's something you're interested in and you're going to put the research in, then that shows as well. And that kind of passion comes through. So I've had a number of comics. The first comic I had is called Black Snow. That's what Black Snow Comics comes from. I didn't create it myself. I co-created it. But my main interest in creating it was exploring kind of superhero culture from the perspective of how absurd it is mixed with real world kind of banal culture of just like the absurdity of having something like superheroes in our commonplace world. This is something not particularly new, but it was something I was interested in at the time. My friend Alex and I had just seen Mystery Men, so that was kind of one of the inspirations. I was really into stuff like Space Ghost and The Tick. Those were the type of kind of surrealist superhero spins that appealed to me. So that's kind of the approach that we took. The next thing that we created together was called Day Camp, and that was autobiographical based on our time, middle school age, and going to day camp at the YMCA. And with that, I think you could kind of boil them down to kind of simple ideas. So like I said, the absurdity of superheroes in like our boring world was Black Snow. Day Camp's kind of like the angst of that kind of tween age and how everything seems strange and more important than it is, that kind of thing. So that was kind of an interesting, different approach to it. And of course, that's definitely writing something that I knew. At one point, we even featured ourselves in the comics. Most of the characters are based off of people we actually knew. So that's another approach you can take. That one you got to be maybe a little more careful with if you're dealing with real people and you're not getting the permission first or that kind of thing. Could get you into some trouble. Some other comics I've worked on, I'm Famous, which was a spin-off of Black Snow, and that took the idea of the superhero but focused very specifically on celebrity culture and how a celebrity superhero would fit into our world. But it also kind of took our world and parodied it more than what we had done with Black Snow in a lot of ways, and kind of made it like a hyper, not hyper realistic, kind of the opposite, hyper surrealistic, I would say, and just kind of the power that this celebrity superhero would have, even though he's such like a buffoon, and where it takes him and that kind of thing. Another one we worked briefly on is called Detroit Mock City. So several of our comics were set in Detroit, particularly Black Snow, and Detroit was something that interested us a lot. I think one of the initial ideas why we set Black Snow in Detroit is because the crime rate was so well known there that it seemed like that's where a superhero would be needed, and that's where naturally someone would kind of try to rise up to prevent some of this crime. So Detroit Mock City was more of a it was a very short-lived, but it is a political humor where we took actual real-world facts about Detroit and kind of presented them in humorous ways. And again, Detroit was something we were interested in, we wanted to learn more about. So that one was not really applying anything we knew, because neither of us have been to Detroit to this day, but it's something that interested us. So, and one of the comics I've worked on the longest that I created myself after Alex kind of moved away and I wanted my own project is optimistically cynical. And one of the things I really like about this comic is that it doesn't really have like a very direct focus. It's not limited in its scope. It could be kind of about whatever. So it started out primarily being about kind of the disappointment of being a young adult, and that thing of like always hearing you're special and go to college, everything's gonna work out, and then when you graduate, maybe not so much. It focused a lot on like millennial culture and hipsters and like the humor of that. And as it's gone on, I've adapted it to kind of whatever I'm feeling interested in at the time. So it could be something profound one week where talking about like racial inequality or poverty or political corruption, kind of larger issues. Sometimes it could get philosophical where it's talking about like, I've had one about Nietzsche's Superman. I made Leopold and Loeb regular recurring characters in there. I have one, I already made it, but I don't know if it came out yet or not, but it's about Schrodinger's cat and that kind of thing. But at the same time, sometimes it's as simple as taking a phrase like getting your ducks in a row and showing that. It was like he put all his duck cartoon character action figures lined up, and that's what he meant by it. Sometimes it could be absurdly stupid things, and oftentimes when it talks about the big things, the actual punchline of it is something particularly stupid. That's just like what makes me laugh. It's my kind of thing. And I hope it translates out to some other people. But one of the reasons that I've enjoyed doing it for so long, whereas there's kind of a simple premise of like youth culture, young adult culture, and in particular, I mean, it's optimistically cynical because one of the characters is the eternal optimist and the other one's the eternal pessimist or cynic. And that's something that, of course, I play up on a lot as well, depression and things. But it's whatever I feel like it should be, basically. It doesn't have like a clear-cut mission statement, but it's always something I'm interested in, whether it's remarking on pop culture like Naked and Afraid or where it's talking about like existential dread. It's flexible. So I would say if you want something long-term, let it be something flexible. I know there's a lot of comics that are very focused on one specific aspect. There's one that I like where it's basically every comic's exactly the same. It's aliens talking to each other. They're experiencing Earth culture. They're using language that makes it clear they've never experienced anything like it before, and that's pretty much the joke over and over again. And it works for him. I mean, like I said, it's one of the ones I enjoy. The creator of Garfield, Jim Davis, very famously in an interview way back in, I think, the 80s, came out and said he created Garfield to make money. He didn't make it to be particularly funny. He's not trying to do anything really artistic with it. He wants something that's very easily relatable, that he can repeat the same style jokes over and over, and people kind of welcome it because they like the repetition, they like the same. So it depends on what your goals are too. So I'll mention real quick, since I'm plugging all my comics anyway, one of the current comics I'm working on is Paranormal Pinkerton, which I did at issue 0 about 2 years back, and I'm finishing issue 1 now. And that's an example of doing something you're interested in, because it's set in the Old West. It's a guy who goes out, he's like a supernatural detective in the Old West. And obviously I've never been living in the Old West, but it's something that's always interested me. I like old American history. I like that time period. And I like stories about supernatural things and detectives. So again, it's me taking things I like, things I grew up on, like the X-Files or Hellboy or things of that nature, things that I just enjoy, and putting my own spin on it. And that's another approach you can take. Take something you really like that you kind of want to emulate, put your own spin on it. Don't try to just do the same thing. I found over the years that there's a lot of people who really like Hellboy. I've always liked Hellboy. I never really sought out like fans of it until fairly recently. And joining some of these groups and seeing like some people's projects they try to create, it's basically just them trying to do Hellboy, and it's very explicit. So don't do something like that. Don't try to exactly emulate someone's artwork or writing style. Put your own spin on it. Maybe take from a few different people and combine it, and then you get something a little more unique. You don't want to be someone who's just you don't want someone to be able to point at it and right away say, oh, this is just like blah blah blah. What makes it different? And you're like, oh, I don't know, I like that. Well, if you like that, other people like the original source too. That doesn't mean they want to see a watered down copy of that. So some things to think about. Take a few moments to think about what interests you. Think about if it's going to be a comic book or a graphic novel or a comic strip. Think about how long term you want it to keep going. If it's something that's going to be around a long time, like my comic strip, you want it to be flexible. If it's something very finite where you're trying to tell kind of a singular story, it doesn't have to be. It could be very focused. So really what you need to do is sit down, think about what interests you, what are your goals, what are you trying to achieve with this, and hopefully through that process, naturally something's gonna stand out to you. And once you have an idea, maybe just take a short time to evaluate it. Make sure it's an idea that you're happy with. It's an idea that you're not gonna get bored with halfway through. It's not something that you're gonna realize it's exactly like something else, or there's things about it you wish you had changed, or things like that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Take a little time, put in the work, and your comic idea will come to you. And when it's all done, tell me how much I helped you, and send it on over and I'll read it. All right, I'll catch you later. Till next time.